The crash site was still smoking when we arrived. 3 hours after the distress call, and the damn thing was still burning. That's what happens when a Class 7 Draconian cruiser hits Atmo at 3/4 thrust. The ground doesn't just break, it remembers. I remember every detail of that morning. The sky over Sector 7 was that weird yellow-green color it gets before the dust storms roll in. The kind of light that makes everything look sick, makes you feel like you're already dead and just haven't stopped moving yet. My name is Elias Vance, mechanic, 3rd class, assigned to the Outer Rim Recovery Unit. That's a fancy way of saying I'm the guy they send in when something expensive breaks in places where nobody wants to go. I'd been doing this job for 11 years, seen a lot of wreckage. Never seen anything like what was waiting for us in that crater. The ship had carved a trench nearly 2 clicks long through the red clay. It was twisted like someone had taken a child's toy and bent it into shapes that didn't make sense. The forward section was mostly gone, vaporized on impact, probably. What remained was the midsection and part of the aft drive assembly, and even that was a mess. I was standing about 50 meters back, running diagnostics on my environmental suit, when Lieutenant Voss walked up beside me. He was a thin man with a permanent squint, like he was always trying to see through something. "Well, Vance," he said, "what are we looking at?" I tapped my datapad and pulled up the schematics. Draconian Firebrand class, military vessel. Heavy armor, experimental shielding, and enough firepower to turn a small moon into gravel. I paused. Whatever did this, it wasn't an accident. Voss made a sound in his throat, not quite a laugh. "You think?" "Look at the entry angle," I said, pointing at the trench. Too steep for an emergency descent, too shallow for a combat dive. This ship was trying to land, controlled descent right up until the last few seconds. Then something went wrong. "Something like what?" I shook my head. "I don't know yet, but I'm going to find out." The recovery team had already set up the perimeter. Floodlights on extendable poles, their harsh white light cutting through the haze. Medics in their sterile white suits. Security personnel with weapons drawn, scanning the tree line. Standard protocol for a crash of this magnitude. We were 300 clicks from the nearest settlement, in territory that hadn't been properly surveyed in 30 years. Anything could be out there. I started walking toward the wreck. "Vance," Voss called after me. "Standard procedure says we wait for the full assessment team." "Standard procedure says we wait 3 days for the full assessment team," I said without turning around. "By then, anything valuable will have been scavenged by whatever's living in those hills. You don't even know what's in there." "Exactly, that's why I'm going to find out." The air grew warmer as I approached the wreckage. Even through the suit's climate control, I could feel the residual heat coming off the hull. It wasn't the clean heat of a reactor, it was something else. Something that smelled like burning metal and ozone, and something organic, something that made my stomach tighten. I climbed up onto the exposed section of hull, my magnetic boots clicking against the damaged plating. The metal was warped, buckled in ways that suggested extreme forces, but there were also marks that didn't match any impact pattern I'd ever seen. Long, straight gashes, almost like claw marks. No, that was ridiculous. I shook my head and kept moving. The main airlock was partially open, jammed at about 30 degrees. I pulled out my cutting torch, made quick work of the damaged seals, and forced the door the rest of the way open. The interior was dark, but my suit's lamps cut through the shadows. The first thing I noticed was the blood. It was everywhere. Not human blood, too dark, too thick. It looked almost black in the dim light. It coated the walls, pooled on the floor, dripped from overhead panels. A fine mist of it had settled over everything like someone had sprayed paint through the compartment. "Voss," I said into my comm, "I'm inside, it's bad." "How bad?" I took a step forward and heard the crunch of something under my boot. I looked down. Bone fragments, lots of them. Multiple casualties, I said, my voice sounding strange to my own ears. I'm seeing at least. I can't tell. There are bodies everywhere. Any survivors? I moved further into the ship, stepping carefully over the wreckage. The layout was similar to most military vessels, corridors branching off from a central spine, compartments for crew, storage, engineering. But everything was wrong. The walls were scored, the decks were buckled, and the bodies. The bodies were the worst part. I'd seen death before, plenty of it. Working in the outer rim, you get used to finding things that other people don't want to find, but this was different. The bodies weren't just dead. They were arranged. Voss, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I need you to come inside. Bring the medics. Copy that. What have you got? I didn't answer. I was too busy staring at the scene in front of me. The bodies of the Draconian crew were laid out in a rough circle in the main cargo bay. They weren't just tossed aside, they were placed, carefully, almost reverently. Their hands were folded over their chests, their eyes closed. Their armor had been removed and stacked neatly against the wall. Someone had survived this crash. Someone had cleaned up the dead. Vance, what's happening in there? There's a survivor, I said, the words feeling like they came from somewhere else. Or, there was, someone made this. I moved through the cargo bay, past the circle of bodies, toward the rear of the ship. The engineering section was mostly intact, but the door was sealed. I could hear something on the other side, a low, rhythmic sound. Breathing. Hello, I called out. Is someone in there? No answer, just that steady breathing. I tried the door controls, dead. I pulled out my cutting torch again. Wait, a voice said, soft, female. It came from inside the compartment. I froze. Who's there? You're human, the voice said. It was quiet, almost childlike, but there was something underneath it, something ancient. I can smell you. I'm a mechanic, I said slowly. I'm here to help. Can you open the door? A long pause, then the sound of locks disengaging. The door slid open. She was beautiful. I know that sounds like a strange thing to say. She was draconian, a species that most humans considered terrifying. Scales that shifted between deep crimson and gold, depending on the light. Eyes like molten amber, with vertical pupils that seemed to look right through you. Tall, easily 7 feet, with a lean, powerful frame that spoke of a predator's grace. But she was beautiful. Even now dying, she was beautiful. She was lying on a makeshift bed of salvaged materials. Her armor had been removed, revealing a body covered in wounds, deep gashes that had been crudely bandaged with torn fabric, burns that had blistered and burst. One of her arms was bent at an unnatural angle. Her wings, I hadn't even noticed them at first, were folded beneath her, tattered and broken. You're hurt, I said, stepping closer. I am dying, she said, and there was no fear in her voice, just a statement of fact. But you already knew that. I didn't know what to say. She was right. The wounds were too severe. Even with a full medical team and a trauma bay, she'd be lucky to survive. Out here, with just basic field medicine. I can try to help, I said. I can call for. No, she said firmly. No more humans. I have seen enough of them for one lifetime. I stopped. What happened to your crew? Her eyes flickered to the side, not quite looking at me. They died. From the crash. She didn't answer, but something in her expression made me look closer. There was a tightness around her mouth, a set to her jaw. She was hiding something. The wounds on your crew, I said slowly. They were caused by something, something sharp, something that could leave claw marks on armored hull plating. She looked at me then, really looked at me. Her amber eyes narrowed, and for a moment I saw something dangerous in them. You're observant, she said, for a human. I've been in the salvage business for a long time. You learn to read the evidence. She smiled. It wasn't a kind smile. And what does your evidence tell you about the ship that attacked us? I felt a chill run down my spine. Attacked? This wasn't a crash, it was an ambush. She tried to shift her position and winced. We were running from a battle we were losing. They followed us through the jump. They were waiting when we dropped out of FTL. Who? I don't know their name. They don't give names to their prey. I wanted to ask more questions, but she was losing consciousness. I could see it in the way her breathing was becoming more labored, the way her scales were starting to lose their luster. Listen, I said, moving closer. My name is Elias. I'm going to try to help you, but I need you to stay awake. Can you do that? She laughed, a weak sound that turned into a cough. You want to help me. A human wants to help a draconian. I want to help a person who's dying, I said. Everything else can wait. Something in her expression changed. The suspicion faded, replaced by something I couldn't quite read. Very well, Elias, she said. Help me if you can. I started working. I had basic medical training, all salvage crew did, enough to stabilize someone until proper help arrived. But she was right. She was dying. The internal injuries were too severe. I could patch the wounds, stop the bleeding, but I couldn't fix what was happening inside. I need to move you, I said. We need to get you out of this wreck and back to the base. There's a hospital there. We can. There is no hospital that can help me, she said. I am already gone. The damage is too deep. I can feel it spreading. I knew she was right. I'd seen that look before. The eyes that were starting to glaze over, the way her breath was coming in shallow gasps. She had maybe an hour, maybe less. I won't let you die here, I said, and I meant it. I can't let you die alone. That made her look at me again. Why does it matter to you? I am just an enemy soldier. A creature from a species that has been at war with yours for nearly 100 years. Because you're a person, I said simply, and people shouldn't die alone. The silence that followed was heavy. I could hear the distant sounds of the recovery team outside, the crackle of Voss's voice over the comm. But in here, in the dim light of the engineering bay, it was just the two of us. You're a strange human, Elias, she said finally. Strange and foolish. That's what they tell me. I am Valora, she said. Valora of House Eszin, commander of the Firebrand. I nodded. Nice to meet you, Valora, even if the circumstances could be better. That drew a genuine smile. Yes, I would have preferred a formal dinner, or perhaps a battlefield where I was winning. Me too, honestly. I hate losing. Her smile faded, replaced by a look of deep sadness. I have lost everything, Elias. My crew, my ship, my honor. There is nothing left. Bullshit, I said, and she looked surprised. You survived. You got your crew's bodies out of the wreck, laid them out with dignity. You did what you could for them. That's not losing your honor, that's holding on to it. She stared at me for a long moment. How did you know about my crew? I saw what you did in the cargo bay, I said. You arranged them, cleaned them up, made sure they were respected. They were my responsibility, she said quietly. Every life on that ship was mine to protect, and I failed them. You did the best you could with what you had. That's all anyone can do. You speak as if you understand, she said. But you can't. You don't know what it's like to carry the weight of so many lives, to watch them die one by one and know that you could have done more. I sat down next to her. The deck was cold, but I didn't care. You're right, I said. I don't know what that's like, but I do know what it's like to watch someone die and not be able to save them. My mother, she had cancer, the kind that spreads fast and doesn't let go. I held her hand at the end just like I'm holding yours now. She looked down. I hadn't even realized I was holding her hand. Her skin was warm, almost hot to the touch and rough with scales. But there was a softness there too, something fragile. You humans, she said, shaking her head. You feel so much. Comes with the territory. I have met few humans before, she said. Mostly soldiers. They were loud and angry and full of fear. They would have shot me the moment they saw me. They were scared, I said. Fear makes people do stupid things. And you, she asked, meeting my eyes again, are you scared? I looked at her. I thought about the war, the centuries of conflict between our species, the propaganda on both sides that told us the other was monsters, the millions dead, the billions displaced, the countless acts of brutality committed in the name of survival. And then I looked at her, dying, alone, scared even if she wouldn't admit it. Yeah, I said, I'm scared, but not of you. What then? Of losing you, I said. Of watching another person die and not being able to stop it. She was quiet for a long time. Then she reached up with her other hand and touched my face. Her claws were sharp, but her touch was gentle. You are a good man, Elias, she said. I wish I had met you under different circumstances. Me too. We sat there in silence. Her breathing was getting shallower. I could feel her grip on my hand weakening. Will you stay, she asked, until the end? Of course, I said. I'm not going anywhere. Thank you, she whispered. I do not want to die alone. You won't be alone, I said. I'm right here. She smiled. It was a peaceful smile, content, the smile of someone who had accepted what was coming. I should tell you something, she said, about the attack. About who did this. Save your strength, I said. No, you need to know. They are coming, Elias. The ones who destroyed my ship, they will come for your world next. Who are they? I don't know their name. We only know what they call themselves in the old tongue, the shepherds. She was getting weaker. Her eyes were starting to flutter closed. Shepherds, I asked. Shepherds of what? The weak, she said, her voice barely a whisper. They gather the weak, the desperate, they promise salvation, but what they give is slavery. What do they want? Everything, she said. They want everything, your world, your people, your souls. Her hand tightened on mine and I felt her body shudder. The amber in her eyes was fading, turning gray. Elias, she said. I am going now. Stay with me, I said, just a little longer. I cannot, she squeezed my hand one more time. But you must remember, tell your people, warn them. I will, I said, I promise. She looked at me one more time. Her eyes were almost empty now, but I could still see something in them. Gratitude, maybe, or relief. Thank you, she said, for holding my hand. And then she was gone. Chapter 2, The Echo of the Dead. I don't know how long I sat there. Minutes, maybe hours. I just held her hand and stared at nothing, feeling the warmth drain out of her body. The world outside the ship had gone quiet. I could hear the dust storm picking up, howling against the hull like a wounded animal. Eventually, Voss's voice crackled over the comm. Vance, where the hell are you? We've been trying to reach you for the past hour. Here, I said, my voice hoarse. I'm in engineering. What's your status? One survivor, I said. She's dead. Just one. The ship had a crew of 37. 37 dead, I said. All of them. A long pause. I'm coming in, stay where you are. I didn't move, I couldn't. I was still holding her hand. Voss found me about 15 minutes later. He stepped through the door and saw me sitting there, still holding her hand, and he froze. Vance, he said softly, what happened? I don't know, I said. I don't know what happened. He moved closer. I could see him studying the scene, taking in the makeshift bed, the wounds, the body of the draconian commander. She tried to save them, I said, her crew. She laid them out with respect. Even though she was dying, she made sure they were taken care of. Voss nodded slowly. That's not something we usually see from draconians. She was different, I said. She wasn't what we were told they were. I finally let go of her hand. Her fingers were cold now, stiff. I gently folded her arms over her chest, the way she had done for her crew. What did she tell you? Voss asked. Everything, I said. She told me everything. I stood up. My legs were stiff, cramped from sitting in the same position for so long, but I felt strangely calm, numb. She told me about the attack, I said. About the ones who did this. They're coming, Voss. They're coming for us. Who? She called them shepherds. I walked out of the engineering bay and through the cargo bay, past the circle of dead draconians. I stopped in front of the bodies and looked at them. Their faces were still peaceful. Valara had done that. She had given them dignity in death. Take them all, I said to Voss. Bring them back with us. We need to examine them properly. There might be evidence on their bodies that tells us more about what happened. I thought we couldn't analyze draconian biology, Voss said. Our tech doesn't read their medical data. It doesn't read their standard medical data, I said, but their bodies might have something else. Something that would show up under a different kind of scan. Like what? I'll let you know if I find something. I walked past him and climbed out of the wreck. The dust storm was getting worse. I could feel the grit against my suit, hear it hissing against the helmet. Vance, wait, Voss called after me. We need to finish cataloging the wreckage. We need to. We need to go, I said. We need to get back to base and start preparing. The shepherds are coming. What the hell are you talking about? I turned to face him. I'm talking about the biggest threat humanity has ever faced. The draconians weren't trying to kill us. They were running from something worse. Something so terrifying that they were willing to retreat, to lose face, to sacrifice everything just to get away. Voss stared at me. For once he had nothing to say. We go back, I said. We analyze the bodies, we find out what the shepherds are, and we prepare. Prepare for what? Everything, I said. They're coming for everything we have. I walked away from the crash site. Behind me, I could hear Voss calling out orders, telling the team to begin extracting the bodies. The dust storm was closing in, turning the sky the color of old blood. But I didn't look back. I couldn't. I'd already seen enough. The return trip to base took 12 hours. 12 hours in a cramped transport, sitting in silence while the others tried to make sense of what I'd told them. I didn't say much. I just stared out the window at the empty void and thought about Valara. I thought about the things she'd said, the shepherds, the promise of salvation, the slavery that followed, the desperate, the weak, the ones who had nowhere else to go. It was a recruitment strategy, but on a scale I'd never seen before. She said they'd been at war with the draconians for centuries. Not a war of conquest, but a war of attrition. The shepherds were like a parasite, slowly draining their victims of everything they had until there was nothing left but the desperate and the broken. And then they offered them a way out. But the way out was just another cage. When we finally landed at Sector 7 base, I was exhausted. I hadn't slept. I couldn't shake the feeling that every moment I wasted was a moment closer to the end. We need to run full autopsies on the bodies, I said to the medical team as they offloaded the draconian remains. Look for anything unusual, anything that might have been caused by something other than the crash. What exactly are we looking for? One of the medics asked. I don't know, I admitted, but I'll recognize it when I see it. They gave me skeptical looks. I didn't care. I was right about the evidence, even if I didn't fully understand it yet. I was also right about the shepherds. We found the first sign of them 3 days later. I was in the med lab, watching the autopsies, when one of the medics called me over. Vance, you need to see this. I walked over to where he was working. He had opened one of the draconian's chests and was examining the internal organs. What's that? I asked, pointing at a strange growth on the liver. I don't know, he said. I've never seen anything like it. It doesn't match any known draconian pathology. It's almost like it's something that was added, an implant of some kind. Show me. He lifted the organ out of the body and placed it on the table. The growth was small, about the size of a fingernail, but it was clearly unnatural. It had a metallic sheen to it, and it pulsed with a faint light. "Get me a microscope," I said. The image was unsettling. The growth was a lattice of organic and inorganic material, fused together in a way that shouldn't have been possible. It was like nothing I'd ever seen. "That's not human," I said. It wasn't a question. "Draconian?" the medic asked. "No, I think this is something different." I spent the next few hours examining the growth. I found similar implants in every single draconian body. They were all located in the same place, on the liver, and they all showed the same pattern of fusion and growth. This wasn't a disease. This was something that had been done to them. "I need to run this through the genetic database," I said. "See if there are any matches." I did. The results came back negative. This wasn't anything from the known universe. I started researching the shepherds. I went through all the data we had on draconian conflict zones and the various factions they'd fought. Most of it was propaganda, biased and incomplete. But I found a few mentions of an enemy they didn't talk about much. A species they called the Masters, or sometimes just the Shepherds. Not much was known about them. They were secretive, even by draconian standards. They didn't communicate, they didn't negotiate, they didn't leave survivors. They just came and took and left behind only death. "This is a trap," I said to Voss. "The Shepherds planted something inside the crew, something that would survive the crash in." "And what?" "Send a signal," I said. "Trackers. They knew the ship would be recovered and brought to a base. They knew we'd bring the bodies back, and we'd spend time examining them. They wanted to buy time." "Buy time for what?" I looked at him, feeling a cold dread spread through my stomach. "For the attack," I said. The next 2 weeks were a blur of activity. I didn't sleep more than a few hours a night. I worked alongside the techs and the engineers, setting up defenses, reinforcing the perimeter, and preparing for the worst. And the worst was coming. We could feel it in the air. The base was on high alert. Everyone was on edge, looking over their shoulders, waiting for something terrible to happen. "It's just a feeling," Voss said. "It's more than a feeling," I said. "It's a pattern. There's a rhythm to what they're doing. I just don't understand it." "Maybe they're not coming after us, Vance," Voss said. "Maybe this is something else. Maybe we're reading too much into it." "No," I said. "They're coming. They're just waiting for the right moment. They want to see us panic first." My mind went back to Valara, the way she'd spoken of the shepherds, the faint note of fear in her voice that she couldn't quite hide. She wasn't afraid of death. She was afraid of them. "Vance, you're doing it again," Voss said. "Doing what?" "Staring off into space. You've been doing that a lot since the crash." I turned to look at him. "Have I?" "Yeah, it's like you're not really here. Like part of you is still stuck inside that wreckage." He wasn't wrong. A part of me was still stuck there. A part of me was still holding Valara's hand. "I need to go back," I said. "Back where?" "To the crash site. There might be something I missed, something that would help us understand what we're dealing with." "Vance, that's insane. The site has been picked clean. There's nothing left." "Maybe not, but I have to try." He shook his head. "You're letting this get to you. You need to step back, get some rest, and let the experts handle this." I didn't argue with him. I just walked out of the room. The next day, I went back to the crash site. The transport dropped me off at the edge of the crater. The wreckage had been partially dismantled by the recovery team, but the main hull was still there, a blackened skeleton against the red sky. I walked through the ship, checking every corner. I didn't know what I was looking for, maybe just a feeling, a sense of closure. I ended up in the engineering bay. The makeshift bed was still there, but it was empty now. No Valara, no warmth, just a cold slab where she had lain dying. I sat down on the deck. The silence was heavy, broken only by the distant sound of the wind. "I'm sorry," I said to the empty room. "I should have done more." I didn't expect a reply, but I felt something, a presence in the room, a ghost. No, not a ghost, a memory, a feeling. Valera had spent her final hours in this room. She'd arranged her crew's bodies, made her peace, and waited to die. And in her final moments, she'd chosen to trust a human. Why? Because I'd held her hand. Because I'd shown her kindness when she had no reason to expect it. "Thank you," a voice said. I jerked around. No one was there. But I knew what I'd heard. "She's not coming back, Vance," I said to myself. "She's dead, you're losing it." But I knew what I'd heard. I left the wreckage and walked back to the transport. The sky above me was darkening, and I could feel the dust storm starting to pick up. When I got back to the base, I discovered the medical team had found something. "Vance, you need to see this," the lead medic said. He led me to the lab and pointed at the screen. It was showing a scan of one of the implants we'd found. "What's this?" "Look closer." I leaned in. The scan showed a tiny, almost microscopic network of biological pathways. It was a pattern, intricate and complex, with a rhythm that seemed almost organic. "This is a message," I said. "We think so too," the medic said. "It's a code, a biological code. We've been trying to decode it, but..." "But what?" He hesitated. "But we think it's not just a message. We think it's a trigger." "A trigger for what?" "I don't know, but we can't let it activate." I stared at the screen. The pattern pulsed, glowing faintly like a heartbeat. "Can we neutralize it?" "We can try, but it might take a while." "We don't have a while," I said. "They're coming, and I think this message is meant to signal them, to tell them we're ready." We worked through the night, the medical team and I, trying to decode the message and find a way to stop it. By dawn, we'd made some progress, but not enough. "We need more time," the medic said. "We don't have it," I said. "They're already here." They came just before sunset. The sky turned orange and then a deep dark red, and then they appeared. At first they were just lights in the sky, tiny dots like stars coming to life, but they grew larger, closer, and soon we could see them for what they were. Ships, hundreds of them, maybe thousands. They filled the sky, blotting out the sun, casting long shadows over the base. "All hands to battle stations," Voss's voice blared over the comm. "We are under attack." I ran to the observation deck and looked up at the ships. They were sleek and silver like needles cutting through the sky. No markings, no insignia. Just the cold, metallic perfection of something that had no soul. "They're landing," someone said. And they were. Ships began descending, lowering themselves to the ground with an eerie silence. Soon, the base was surrounded. "Don't engage," I said into the comm. "Let them land." "What, Vance, are you crazy?" "Let them land," I said again. "They won't attack until they deliver their message. They need to see our reaction." I knew this from Valera. She'd told me about their tactics. They liked to see the fear in their victims' eyes before they struck. The first ship touched down on the tarmac. A ramp descended, and out walked a figure. He was tall, humanoid, with pale skin and silver hair. He wore a long coat that billowed in the wind, and his eyes were black as void. "Greetings, humans," he said. His voice was soft, melodic, almost pleasant. "I am Heron, and I have a proposition for you." I stepped out of the base and walked toward him. I wasn't armed. I didn't need to be. "I'm not interested," I said. He smiled. "That's a shame. We have so much to offer. Salvation, safety, a place in the new order." "I know what you offer," I said. "Slavery, you offer slavery." The smile flickered. "That's a strong word. We prefer to think of it as guidance." "Guidance?" I laughed. "You're parasites. You prey on the weak and desperate. You offer them hope and then you take everything they have." The weak need guidance, human. They need someone to show them the way. We are that someone. We have done it for countless worlds, for countless species. And we have never failed. You killed the Draconians, I said. Every last one of them. You destroyed their ship and killed everyone aboard. The Draconians refused our offer, he said. They chose to fight, and they lost. I looked at him, at his cold, empty eyes, at his smug, self-satisfied smile. Tell me about the implants, I said. His smile faded. What implants? The ones you planted in the Draconian crew. The biological messages, the triggers. I know you used them to track us to find this base. He stared at me. For a moment I thought I saw something in his eyes, surprise or maybe fear. You're smarter than I thought, he said, but it doesn't matter. The message has been received. We know everything about you. We know your weaknesses. We know how to destroy you. Maybe, I said, but you've already lost. Oh, and how's that? I smiled. Because you showed your hand too early. I know what you are and I know how to stop you. Impossible. I saw it in a dying Draconian's eyes, I said. I saw the fear, but I also saw the hope. She had hope even in the face of death, and that hope is going to destroy you. He took a step back. You're bluffing. Am I? I turned and walked back to the base. Behind me, I could hear Heron shouting orders. Kill him now. But it was too late. I'd already reached the door, and as I stepped inside, I pressed a button on my comm. Launch. The base's defenses fired up. Missiles streaked through the air, exploding against the alien ships. The Shepard's landing craft were destroyed, one by one. The sky filled with fire and debris. You'll pay for this, Heron shouted. You'll all pay. But I was already gone. The battle lasted 3 hours. 3 hours of chaos and death and destruction. But in the end, we won. The Shepards retreated. Their fleet limped away, damaged and broken. They'd lost more than they'd gained, and they'd learned something important. They'd learned that humans weren't easy prey. We did it, Voss said, clapping me on the back. We actually did it. No, I said, she did. Who? Valera. I walked to the med lab. The Draconian bodies were still there, still being examined, but I wasn't interested in them anymore. I was interested in her. I approached Valera's body. Her eyes were closed, her face peaceful. She looked almost alive. Thank you, I whispered, for trusting me. I reached out and touched her hand. It was cold now, but I didn't care. You were right about them, I said. They're monsters, but they're not invincible, and we're not going to let them win. I stood there for a long time, holding her hand. Rest in peace, Valera, I said. You earned it. And then I walked out of the room. Part 2. Chapter 1. The Waking of the Sleeper. The days after the battle were strange. We'd won, but it didn't feel like victory. It felt like the calm before the storm. The Shepards had retreated, but they'd be back. That much was certain. They wouldn't give up so easily. We need to prepare, I said to Voss. We need to learn more about them. We need to understand what we're dealing with. How do we do that? I've been thinking. Valera said they've been fighting for centuries. Someone must have records. Someone must know something about them. Who? The Draconians are our enemies. They won't help us. They might, I said, if we can prove to them that we know the truth, that the Shepards are a threat to everyone. Voss shook his head. It's a long shot, Vance, a really long shot. Maybe, but it's the only shot we've got. I spent the next few weeks researching the Draconians. I read everything I could find. Their history, their culture, their conflict with the Shepards. I even made contact with a few Draconian exiles who'd escaped the war. They confirmed everything Valera had said. The Shepards were real. They were organized. They had an empire that spanned thousands of worlds and countless species. But they also had a weakness. They can't be everywhere at once. one exile told me. They're powerful, but they're stretched thin. They rely on fear to control their victims. If you show them you're not afraid, they lose power. Then we have to show them, I said. We have to stop being afraid. But that was easier said than done. Fear was a powerful weapon, and the shepherds knew how to use it. The first sign that something was wrong came 3 weeks after the battle. I was in my quarters reviewing the research when I noticed something strange on the datapad. A pattern, a message hidden in the data that I hadn't seen before. It was a biological message, just like the ones we'd found in the draconian bodies. Impossible, I said. We checked everyone. There were no shepherds on the base. But there were. The message had been planted on the base before the attack, by someone on the inside. We ran a full scan. We found 5 more implants in 5 different staff members. They'd been there for weeks, silently sending data back to the shepherds. We have moles, Voss said. We've been compromised. No, I said. Not moles, sleepers. They were activated by the battle. The shepherds used the chaos of the attack to plant them. How long have they been there? I don't know, but we need to get rid of them. We did. We removed the implants and isolated the affected staff members. But the damage was done. The shepherds had learned everything about us. Our tactics, our weaknesses, our defenses. They'd be back, and this time they'd be ready. They came 2 months later. This time they didn't announce themselves. They just appeared, ships descending from the sky, silent and deadly. All hands battle stations, Voss shouted. But it was already too late. They were already on the ground, already advancing. I ran to the defensive line, weapon in hand. I could see them coming. Hundreds of them moving in formation, eyes glowing with cold determination. We can't hold them, someone said. Then we don't, I said. We outsmart them. I had a plan, a desperate, foolish plan, but a plan nonetheless. We need to make them think we're weak, I said. Let them advance. Let them think they're winning. Vance, that's suicide. Trust me. I gave the order to retreat. The soldiers fell back, firing sporadically, trying to look panicked. The shepherds advanced, their confidence growing with every step. But they didn't notice that we weren't actually retreating. We were falling back into a trap. When the shepherds reached the center of the base, we struck. We'd planted explosives around the perimeter, hidden in the walls. We detonated them all at once. The explosion was massive. It tore through the base, killing dozens of shepherds and scattering the rest. The survivors tried to regroup, but it was too late. We'd broken their formation. Attack, Voss shouted. And we did. We charged into the chaos, weapons blazing. The shepherds fought hard, but they were disoriented, unprepared. We drove them back, herding them into a narrow alley where we could cut them down one by one. Retreat, I heard Heron's voice. Fall back to the ships. But we weren't done yet. We followed them to their ships, destroying them one by one. When it was over, the base was in ruins, but we'd won again. How many of them did we kill? Voss asked. Over 100, I said, maybe more. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt tired. Tired of fighting, of death, of watching people I'd come to know die in front of me. We've driven them off, Voss said. We've won. No, we haven't, I said. We're just delaying the inevitable. The shepherds will come back again and again until we're dead or they've enslaved us. We can't keep fighting them. Then what are we going to do? I thought about Valera, about the expression on her face when she told me to warn my people, about the hope that had flickered in her eyes. We're going to do what she couldn't, I said. We're going to fight them on their own terms. We're going to find their homeworld and destroy them once and for all. That's insane. We don't even know where their homeworld is. No, I said, but I know someone who does. The draconian exiles were skeptical. They'd never trusted humans, and they didn't trust me. Even if we knew where the shepherd's homeworld was, one of them said, we couldn't help you. We have no ships, no weapons, no soldiers. Then help me by telling me everything you know, I said. Every rumor, every story, every scrap of information. It might be enough. They told me what they knew about the Shepherds' origins, their rise to power, the secret of their civilization. The Shepherds weren't a species. They were something else. A hive mind of sorts, an artificial intelligence that absorbed other beings and incorporated them into its consciousness. Every victim, every slave became a part of them. Then that's how we stop them, I said. We break the hive. We disconnect their victims from the network. If we can cut them off from each other, we can win. It's not that simple, the exile said. The hive mind is embedded in their homeworld, a central core. If we destroy that core, then we destroy the entire race. Exactly. I thought about it. The Shepherds had killed billions. They'd enslaved countless species, including the Draconians. They'd done untold damage to the galaxy. But was it right to destroy them all, even the ones who weren't responsible for the atrocities? Voss said, we need a decision. I thought about Valera, about what she'd said. They're coming, Elias. They will come for your world next. They are monsters, I said, but they're not invincible, and we're not going to let them win. Your decision. I nodded. We destroy the core, we free their victims, and we end this war. The plan was audacious. We'd need ships, soldiers, supplies. We'd need the Draconians to help us. But Voss was right. It was the only way. We had to end this. We rallied the Draconian exiles. We gathered the scattered remnants of the resistance. We built our fleet from the ashes of the war. And then we set course for the Shepherds' homeworld. We need to establish a blockade around their world, I said. We need to stop their ships from escaping. And then we push forward, we fight our way to the core, and we destroy it. The battle was brutal. The Shepherds fought with desperation, knowing that their existence was at stake. But we pushed through. We broke their defenses and advanced on the central hive. Vance, I think we're doing it, Voss said over the comm. We're breaking through. But I knew it wasn't over yet. The Shepherds had one more trick up their sleeves, a final desperate gambit that would make or break the battle. Look, someone shouted. I looked up and saw it, a massive shadow descending from the sky. Their final weapon, a ship so huge it blotted out the stars. If that ship reaches the planet, the exile said, it's over, we can't let it dock. I looked at our fleet. We were battered, broken, running on fumes, but we had to stop that ship. All ships, I said into the comm, fulfill your final mission. You're the heroes of this battle. The shuttles launched, making their way toward the enormous structure. We were outgunned, outnumbered, but we had something they didn't have. We had hope. The final battle was chaos. Ships exploded all around me as I got closer to the core of the hive. I could see Heron in the distance, his face a mask of rage. You can't win, human, he shouted. We have the strength of countless worlds. Maybe, I said, but you don't have the will to live, that's the difference. I charged. He met me, his eyes blazing with hatred, but he was weak, desperate, his strength fading. I don't remember much of the fight after that. I just remember swinging, dodging, pushing forward, and finally I broke through his defenses. End this, I said, end the war. He laughed. You think death will stop me? I will always exist. I will always be inside you. You can't escape me. Maybe not, I said, but I can end this. I can end you. I raised my weapon and struck. The core shattered and the Shepherds began to die. The connection was broken. Gone, I said, they're all gone. But Heron was still there. He laughed, his eyes burning with defiance. You think you've won, he said. You've only won the battle. We will come back. We will always come back. Not today, I said. I raised my weapon and fired. Chapter 2, The Final Goodbye. The battle was over. The Shepherds were dead. The war was finished. But the cost had been high. The fleet was destroyed and most of the soldiers were dead. I walked through the remains of the hive, looking at the bodies of the fallen. Voss found me there. "Vance," he said, "we did it, the war is over." I looked at him, but I didn't feel relieved. I felt empty, hollow. "The war is over," I said. "So many people are dead. Valera's dead, the Draconians are dead, we're all dead." "That's not true," Voss said. "We won, we ended them, we saved the galaxy." "Save the galaxy," I said. "At what cost?" I looked at the bodies around me, the shepherds, but also the Draconians who'd helped us, and I thought about Valera. I thought about her last moments, about the smile on her face, about the hope in her eyes. "We have to honor them, Voss," I said. "We have to make sure their deaths meant something." "We will," he said. "We'll build something better, something they would have been proud of." I nodded slowly. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in a long time I felt a flicker of something. Hope. We returned to Earth. We rebuilt. We started a new coalition of species dedicated to peace and cooperation. And I never forgot her. The Draconian exiles were honored as heroes. They were given a home on Earth, a place where they could live in peace. And every year, on the anniversary of the battle, we held a ceremony to remember the fallen. "I was in a battle once," I said to the crowd. "A battle against a species who wanted to destroy us. Valera taught me something that day, something I'll never forget. She taught me that even in the face of death, even when everything seems lost, there is always hope. And she also taught me that kindness, even to an enemy, can make all the difference." I stepped down from the podium and walked away, but as I did, I felt a warmth in my heart, a feeling that she was still with me. "Rest in peace," I whispered, "rest in peace." Epilogue: The hand that held hope. Years passed. I got older, grayer, more tired, but I never stopped working. I never stopped fighting for a better world. And sometimes when I was alone, I would think about her, about Valera, about the moment she took her final breath. I would close my eyes and imagine her smile, the warmth of her hand in mine. And I would remember what she said. "Thank you for holding my hand." That was what made it worthwhile. Not the battles, not the victories, not the glory, but the small moments of connection. The moments where we reached out to each other and said, "I see you, I'm here, you're not alone." It was a dangerous galaxy, full of monsters, both alien and human, but it was also full of wonders, full of moments of unexpected kindness and beauty. "You have to hold on to the good moments, Elias," she'd said. "They're the only things that make the pain bearable." "I know," I said, now alone in my room. "I know." I looked up at the stars. The universe stretched out before me, vast and beautiful, full of mysteries, and somewhere out there Valera was at peace. "I'll see you again," I whispered. "One day I'll see you again." I closed my eyes, and in the darkness I felt a presence, a gentle hand on my shoulder, a soft, whispering voice. "Thank you," she said again, "for holding my hand.